Welcome back to Huddle Up, and we had to close the show today with a little NFL talk because it's hard to believe, but training camp is open this week, and before we know it, preseason's going to start, and that leads us right into the regular season. I can't believe how quickly the offseason has kind of flown by, but with training camp always comes battles on the depth chart, specifically at the quarterback position. There's 5 teams I want to highlight. I'm going to go to you with some of these questions, but there are some jobs up for grabs this season. Your Denver Broncos being one of those teams, the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Las Vegas Raiders, the New England Patriots, and maybe the most intriguing in the Minnesota Vikings. So all those teams, I predict the quarterback battle coming. Let's start off with your Denver Broncos, because is it a 2-way battle? Is it a 3-way battle? Obviously, you drafted Bo Nix, Jared Stidham's there, and the trade for Zach Wilson as well. Who will be the starting quarterback after training camp?
Bo Nix. I think he's got to be the starter on day one because they have invested so much money in Sean Payton coming in here and turning this franchise around, and I don't think they have another year to waste, quite frankly. So, yeah, Zach Wilson is a nice maybe shot in the dark, but I think that is an option only if Bo Nix gets hurt. You need to play this guy and get him reps, especially because he is an older quarterback starting his career as opposed to someone like a J.J. McCarthy with Minnesota where time is a little more on your side than Nix.
I think the one word I would use to sort of sum up the Broncos' rebuild and organization right now is impatient, and I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but there's clearly a sense of urgency to win right away. Bo Nix being a little bit more experienced, I think I would agree with you on that one as well. The Pittsburgh Steelers, they made 2 moves, 2 very cheap and team-friendly moves in signing Russell Wilson to a very affordable deal and acquiring Justin Fields in a trade for essentially pennies on the dollar. They're both quarterbacks that have very unique and dynamic skill sets. Russell Wilson, some might think he's past his prime. Justin Fields is a guy that some people think never was able to reach his prime because of the situation he's in. Who will line up for the Steelers?
I think it's been kind of written in the stars since Russ and Fields both got there, and they've made it known that Russ is going to be the starter, at least to start. I would want to start Fields because I think at this point in his career, Russ is Russ. I think he does give Pittsburgh the best chance, though, to continue that playoff streak, and we saw it last year with the quarterback carousel that they went through. They can win with anyone because of the defense, because of the coaching staff. So I think Russ gives them the best chance to continue that playoff streak and maybe go on a run, but I still think their upside could be potentially highest with Justin Fields.
I think at this point in his career, Justin Fields probably presents a higher ceiling, but the safety net that Russell Wilson brings with an experienced veteran who's just not going to make as many mistakes. I'm not going to call him a conservative quarterback, but last season in Denver, he really didn't throw for a ton of yards, but he also didn't make a ton of mistakes. And I just think that if the Steelers have stability, which Russell Wilson can bring, they're probably a playoff team. So I think I'm going to agree with you in Russell Wilson, although I'd love to see Justin Fields get some meaningful reps there in Pittsburgh. We'll move back to the AFC West here with the Las Vegas Raiders. You got Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell, the experienced veteran-savvy Minshew, going up against Aiden O'Connell, who surprised a lot of people, I think, in a rookie season where he didn't have a whole lot to work with, but kind of held his own in Vegas. Who should have come out on top?
I think you got to give it to Minshew just because of the money you paid for him this offseason. I think money talks and shows us the direction that teams want to go. And so if they were really, truly all in on Aiden O'Connell being the starter this season and giving him a fair shot with kind of a new regime, not totally a new regime, they probably would have went out and signed someone maybe like Jacoby Brissett, who we're going to talk about later, as a guy that can come in and maybe be a little more of a mentor to Aiden O'Connell, come in and start if he gets hurt for any reason, whereas Minshew is coming off a season that he was really productive and helped the Colts almost make the playoffs in a weird offense that they kind of just threw together after Anthony Richardson got hurt. So I think it's got to be Minshew.
I think Gardner Minshew is the modern-day Ryan Fitzpatrick. He's got a ton of personality. He's fun, but most importantly, he's probably the best backup quarterback in the NFL, and he's almost so good that it's tough to call him a backup, but he's quite not consistent enough to be a starter on a very, very good team. But whenever he comes into a new situation, he always seems to exceed expectations. I would probably go with Minshew as your perfect bridge guy and maybe look to draft someone in the next 2 years or so. Another team that just drafted a quarterback is the New England Patriots. The post-Bill Belichick era kicks off this season with Gerard Mayo as the new head coach. So you got Drake May there, the third overall pick, competing with Jacoby Brissett, a guy that knows that organization very, very well. Who will be the day one starter?
I'm going to go with Drake May for this one, the youngster. I think that the live reps are just something that helps all young quarterbacks, quite frankly. And I don't think there's a lot of expectations on this New England team going into the season. I think people are probably sleeping on how good their defense is, but you look at the offense, there's not a lot of pieces around May to help him as far as the pass catchers go. The offensive line needs work, admittedly, but they did draft some players, and I'm always of the opinion that if you're on a timeline right now where you have some time to be patient a little bit, get this guy some reps and see what he can do with them. I understand maybe not wanting to start him right away, but May feels like the guy that has the confidence and has the swagger to come in and really turn some heads even without maybe the best supporting cast around him.
I think this is going to be the first one where I disagree with you, because I think we are going to see Jacoby Brissett. Maybe Drake May comes in around Thanksgiving time, but I mentioned that this is the post-Bill Belichick era, and it would be a very Bill Belichick move to start Jacoby Brissett. And honestly, I don't know how much has really changed in that building, although Belichick is gone, just because Gerard Mayo only ever played for one coach. He only knows one way. He's only ever coached under one coach, and that's Bill Belichick. So I think they're going to stick with sort of that philosophy. Go out and roll out Jacoby Brissett early in the season and kind of see how it goes from there. Last but not least, and I think this is honestly one of the most intriguing ones just because of the weapons that this team has, you got the Minnesota Vikings with Sam Darnold and newly drafted quarterback J.J. McCarthy. Frankly, this is probably the perfect situation for McCarthy, but it feels like the team could be patient with him. Who do you see starting week one?
Well, it's funny. I think I'm going to contradict myself because I said I like seeing the young guys just get the reps, but it all depends on the quarterback that you brought in. I think there's a big difference between Brissett and Sam Darnold, who Darnold has the pedigree, but also learned under Kyle Shanahan a little last year, and when he did come in for Brock Purdy, looked pretty solid, and I think there are still a lot of believers in Darnold and his talent out there, and in a new position with a great offensive head coach in Kevin O'Connell, and like you said, all of those weapons in Minnesota, I'd love to see what Sam Darnold can do, and it does take the pressure off of J.J. McCarthy, who I think, when you compare him to Drake May, I think he was asked to do a lot less in college as a passer than Drake May was, who was that entire North Carolina team. So maybe patience with this specific situation is a little more beneficial, and it will be going forward for McCarthy. So I'm going with Darnold.
I think the scenarios of those two teams being Minnesota and New England are very, very different too. Minnesota committed to Justin Jefferson this season, which means they want to make the playoffs every single year. They don't necessarily have time to experience the growing pains of a young quarterback. I think McCarthy will start on the bench. You go to Sam Darnold, who is a player that is still quite young considering the career he has had, and everyone sort of feels he has some untapped potential. So I think it will be Darnold to kick off the season for the Vikings. But there it is, the 5 biggest quarterback battles heading into training camp and our picks of who will come out victorious in those battles. It's going to be a fun training camp period. It's going to be a fun preseason, but most importantly, I think we're starting to feel the excitement of the NFL season returning.
And college football right around the corner, too. We're going to have a time period here where we've got CFL, NFL, college football all rolling at the same time, and it's the best time when all of that happens. So we can't wait for that, and we can't wait for our next episode. Thank you for joining us, and we'll be back soon.